Hello there, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the podcast, where actually Ralph has just come back from holiday. He is in one piece, which is really fantastic news. The fact of the matter is, Ralph, is that you went off on holiday 2 weeks ago, and then basically all hell broke loose, and you've come back into it, haven't you?
Oh, this is exactly right. I mean, this time, guys, I can say that my knees are fine, my legs are fine. I haven't broken anything on my body,
Yeah,
but I go away for
but
2 weeks and I come back and Europe is kaput.
yes,
And Trump has destroyed the world.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's pretty insane. I just say from my own point of view that every day, obviously, I'm getting up at 4 every day. I'm reading all this news, and I'm just thinking, what is going to happen next? What is he going to say and do next? Because I have just been shocked, really, that someone can just do all this and they're okay with it. I mean, I said in one edition of Watson's Daily, I don't know what you think about this, but I did say on Watson's Daily, I said it's like that annoying bloke down the pub became king of the world, and he just go, oh, I don't like that. Let's get rid of that, or let's do this, or and he just has. It's just incredible, and but anyway. So right. So we really need to talk about Trump, what he's doing, why he's doing it. So yes, I mean, I know that you have some fairly interesting and robust thoughts on this matter, Ralph. So
I have some proprietary comments to make.
yeah, yes, exactly. But
Oh
I mean,
my
this is the thing.
God.
What do you make of it? I mean, it's just, for me, I feel it's shocking in the sense that I thought we were all supposed to be allies, and what he's doing is essentially he's making enemies of his allies and making allies of his enemies.
That's
So
correct.
so yeah,
That's a good way. That's a good way to start, actually.
yeah.
Um,
This is not exactly an upbeat podcast, but
no, it
we're going
won't
to be
be.
giving it to you straight. That's what we're going to do. But anyway, yeah. So what do you
Well,
reckon, Ralph?
you see, I mean, this is such a big topic, and it
Mm,
has so many aspects and so many facets that
yeah,
it's difficult to know where to start to
yeah,
unravel the knot, so to speak.
yeah.
But one thing which I would possibly want to say first is how shocked even I am to see how quickly this unravels.
Mm,
And when I say even, I don't want to big myself up or whatever, but you guys possibly know when you listen to this show that we've had talks about geopolitical developments ever so often here.
mm,
And I have, unfortunately, it gives me no joy to say that, predicted that this is going to happen. And
mm,
what I said is uncanny to me. It happens precisely as I said it would.
mm,
Now, the reason that I haven't killed myself when I said that was that I was sort of hoping against hope that something else might happen. It is always impossible, really, to predict geopolitical events.
yeah.
Trump might be erratic. Of course, he is erratic, so he might do something which I wouldn't have predicted, etc.,
Mm,
etc. But for now, and of course, I'm not saying that this is necessarily going to continue because Trump is erratic and he does make decisions and voices opinions in light of what somebody else has just said to him or what he feels viscerally in any moment. So I don't know, but what it appears to be so far, unfortunately, is consistent with what I expected to happen. And here it is. Now, I would perhaps want to sorry, I'm stammering. This is not particularly eloquent. I will have to be critical of myself for not speaking properly here.
mm,
I think the best way in which I would start is this. In my own mind, I am now referring to America as New America. And what I mean by this to myself is that America has changed. It is beginning to look, and I hope this is not going to be too controversial for me to say that, it is beginning to look to me like a little bit like the Amazon show, Man in the High Castle. This is
Oh
a
yeah,
Philip,
that was a good
yeah,
show. That actually.
yeah, I never watched it, but I
Yeah.
read the Philip K. Dick novel,
Mm-hmm.
and I watched a few episodes. And I'm
Mm.
not going to say here that it's going to be exactly like it, or it's going to be a replica of National Socialism in some respect. Of course, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that New America looks to be a version of Putin's Russia.
Mm.
And just look at the evidence. I mean, Trump 2.0 is better prepared for the administrative run.
Mm.
Trump 1.0, he himself didn't really expect to be president, so there
Mm.
was a little bit of chaotic period of lack of preparedness, which then fell into a rut, and we know, of course, what happened then. Here, he is hitting the ground running. He's prepared
Mm.
all of these various policies which he wished to institute and has instituted on day one. And what I believe is real is this famed Project 25, which of course Trump says he has had no knowledge of. And what that is basically a concerted effort to dismantle checks and balances on the office of the president,
Mm.
to replace the army of civil servants which make any country run by people who are aligned with what is emerging as the MAGA ideology.
Mm.
I read articles which give you some insight from what is happening in these interviews. And one apparently real interview question is, when did you have your MAGA moment?
Mm.
Now, I never want to dramatize. This is anecdotal reasoning, and I know this, and I can be criticized for doing it, but I don't mean it in this way. I'm not saying that, therefore, this is evidence that. But I am saying there's a little bit of evidence here that this is no longer a political policy, but more an ideological movement which is being
Mm.
put into place. So everything needs to be aligned with the MAGA ideology. And the MAGA ideology is, of course, Donald Trump. Donald Trump is similar to Vladimir Putin, in my view, in an aspect that both men align their personal feeling of self-worth with the perceived respect they think their country is getting.
Mm.
If you look at Vladimir Putin, he is well quoted for being on record for saying that the dissolution of the Soviet Union is the gravest geopolitical event that has happened since the Second World War. And what, of course, he means by that is that the Soviet Union has lost its respect and its position in the world, but by implication, he means that I, as Vladimir Putin, have lost my self-worth.
Mm.
And he is now active in rebuilding this by choosing territorial expansion into some semblance of either the empire or the Soviet Union as a restitution of the territorial integrity of an empire in which he, as a person now again, is the hub and the most important figure which holds it all together.
Mm.
And I think there is a lot of merit in this analysis. I hope that people can perhaps follow me in this and that it rings true. Now, if you look at this particular analysis, then you can pretty much say everything I just said for Donald Trump as well, because his MAGA movement rests on the idea of America first. And we've
Mm.
said on this show many times that what that really means is Trump first.
Mm.
He aligns his self-worth with the respect he thinks America is getting, or more importantly, no longer getting. He is
Mm.
on record regularly for saying that people are laughing at America, they won't laugh at America anymore, etc., etc. So in this respect, they are similar. Both men have dictatorial leanings. In the case of Vladimir Putin, he is a dictator. In the case of Donald Trump, he wants to be a dictator. And that is not me smearing the man. It is clear from his own statements that he has got these leanings, so that he does regard the plurality of voices in a democracy as a hindrance to implement the policies which he thinks needs to be implemented. And he is clearly behind the scenes thinking about preparing a third term, in violating the constitution in some way. We will have to see what transpires. We're not there yet. We're only 1 month in. But that is what he stands for.
Yeah.
So if you look at it in this way, then some of what he's doing now maybe falls into place. Maybe there appears some method behind what looks like madness to a person who has lived in Europe like me all my life, and he's used to a regular, responsible way of diplomacy and policy making. And so what you find then is clearly a retrenchment of America from the world stage towards isolationism, towards a situation where everything is being done to serve the perceived benefit of America. That is economically the case, and it lives in the tariff policies which he is instituting. But it is also importantly the case militarily, from a point of view of security. He said many times that Europe needs to stand on its own 2 feet and pay for its own security. And before we move on, interestingly, I would actually agree with that. That is not a silly demand to make. He is also not the first president to make this demand. Obama has said it, Clinton has said it, many people have said it, and I think it is valid to expect Europe to pay up for its security. And so to that extent, I would even agree with him. What I find alarming is the reckless way in which he is instituting this demand, basically by saying that we are now retrenching or retreating inside of NATO. We are removing the security backstop of America. Essentially what he's basically saying that we are diluting Article 5. Just so that we're all on the same page, Article 5 is the cornerstone of NATO, which is the sort of Three Musketeers thing, one for all and all for one. If one country in NATO gets attacked, that will be regarded by the NATO military leadership as an attack on all countries. And so therefore, if somebody attacks Estonia, then America and everybody else is coming in and defending Estonia. That's Article 5. So essentially, he's diluting Article 5 even now. And then second, so keep that in mind. And then second to that, but related, he is wanting to elevate himself as almost a near messianic figure, a person who is able to resolve all the conflicts in the world where nobody else was able to. He is also, of course, bigging himself up as the master of the deal. He has written or allowed somebody else to write a book about this subject. And so what he's now doing is he's bringing in transactional philosophy to this, but he's not actually negotiating. That's an important point to realize. What he's doing instead is he is cozying up to Putin, who he admires as a person, who he wants to be like, and whose respect he is seeking. And in these negotiations, this is my personal feeling, he doesn't want to resolve the conflict. He wishes to garner the respect of a person who he admires. And that is why he gives Putin everything he wants. It's not a negotiation if one party just basically says, yes, you can have this, and you want this, you can have that too. Excellent, fantastic. Good negotiation. No, it's not a negotiation. It is a surrender.
Yeah.
And that is what we said before last year, what I've said regularly during this program, that he will surrender Ukraine
Mm-hmm.
to Putin for these reasons, that he is going to also give Putin the assurance that Ukraine is not going to be a member of NATO, even a watered down, diluted NATO. That is already happening.
Mm.
And the result of this, unfortunately, is going to be, again, exactly as we said, that Putin is going to be able to regroup, rebuild his military, and presumably, in response to lifting of sanctions, which is also going to do, rebuild his economy, and then come back for another bite at the cherry, because
Mm.
Putin's declared goal is to assimilate Ukraine, which he does not regard as a sovereign state, and this is where it gets chilling. Beyond that, rebuild some semblance of the Soviet Union. And if NATO is indeed going to be weakened, as it already is now,
Mm.
then he will be emboldened to test Article 5, see whether indeed Trump is not going to come to the rescue, whether Trump indeed has retrenched from NATO
Mm.
by invading Estonia. For
Mm.
example, Estonia is a very small country, and this is going to be a test case. So I have a fear that within 3 to 5 years, we're going to have an issue, and we're going to have the potential for actual territorial war
Mm.
in a theater in Europe, which is a NATO country. And that would be the specter. So, just
Mm.
to summarize, I think what is going on in these negotiations is Trump elevating himself, Trump wanting to look at home as a near messianic figure, doing deals where nobody else has been able to, by
Mm.
not actually negotiating, but just basically by giving everything to a dictator who he admires and whose personal respect is seeking. So
Mm.
that's basically where I am on this for now. I have more to say, but I'm going to
Mm.
stop for the moment.
I mean, the other thing, if that does happen, I would also say that doesn't bode well for Taiwan either, because um, you would have thought. I mean, I don't want this to happen, but you would have thought that with NATO weakened, everything up in the air in Europe, politically, if China was ever going to move in to Taiwan, now would be a fairly good time to do it. I mean, it's not good, obviously, because it would, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying if you're looking from a strategy point of view, there's worse timing, you know.
Yes, absolutely. This is an interesting one because I'm unclear on this actually,
Mm.
because it's not exactly analogous.
Mm.
We need to remember, if I mean, this is a big if, of course. I'm not claiming that I'm right
Mm.
on this, but if my analysis does make some sense, then what he does now is driven to no small extent by his desire to be respected by a person who he admires.
Mm.
But China is not like that. I mean, he may admire uh, Xi as well,
Mm.
but it is clear that he regards China as a foe,
Mm.
because the major target of his tariff war is China.
Mm.
The major um, author of presumed exploitation of America on the world stage
Mm.
is China.
Mm.
And so, and of course, Taiwan isn't a NATO country, so there is not even the expectation that the USA comes to the rescue of Taiwan.
Mm.
And so I do wonder if China were to invade Taiwan with the obvious severe economic repercussions that would have on the USA, in that case, he might actually choose to stand against China.
Mm.
It's not quite the analogous situation here.
Oh, maybe then. You were talking about the sort of transactional nature of what he's doing.
Mm.
Maybe he could say, hey, Taiwan, look at what's happening in Europe. when I'm threatening you with, I'll take all my toys away. I'm serious. Look at what's happening in Europe now. So you'd better pay us loads of money for all the, for the defence. And by the way, we'd like a lot of your chip making capacity.
Yes.
And Taiwan is going to, well, they can't do anything. They're going to have to do what he says.
Yes,
maybe there's that.
That's an interesting point. What he might say is precisely, okay, Taiwan, look, we're going to come to your rescue, and the bill for that is going to be half your chip making capacity or all of it,
Yeah.
which is actually analogous to what he did in Ukraine already. I mean, he basically, by the way, there's a little thing here which is quite interesting. I mean, it is widely publicized that he basically said to Zelensky, look, we want half of your rare earths deposits. That actually, Zelensky did something there which backfired, because Zelensky, if you remember the victory plan which he presented in the White House, that was partially based on Zelensky's idea to exploit that transactional nature of Trump.
Yeah.
So what Zelensky apparently said was, look, we've got these rare earth deposits here. You can have half of it if you come to our rescue. And if you continue support. And apparently all the Trump aides went like, yeah, there's an interesting idea. Let's think about this. And they drew up a document which they then presented to Zelensky. Zelensky sort of opened the envelope and thinking, oh, this is going to be good, excellent, this is going to be working, my ploy is working. And he was effectively presented a bill for services rendered. This is the genesis of this. So I don't know. This is also talks to the danger of trying to manipulate Trump, because the man is unpredictable and unclear. But back to what you said, it is indeed possible that this might happen. Indeed, what I find interesting, and I noted, there is a change in the One China policy, which has been the policy of the US towards China forever, and they have now removed some wording which gives reason to expect that the US is more interested in an independent Taiwan. And China has already jumped up and down, and all hell broke loose apparently diplomatically because of this. So I'm not sure this is exactly analogous to the situation in Europe, but of course you are right. Such a stance of weakening NATO and what's the best word here? And visibly and openly retrenching from the world stage is going to possibly embolden China to make some move.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
But you were saying, I mean, do you think that conscription is going to have to come back?
Yes, absolutely. What I'm saying there is this. So now we have depressed ourselves. This is the doom and the gloom. And now let's see what would therefore need to happen. How can we, by we I mean Europe, respond to this? My first degree, one of my first degrees is history. You may not know this, because I always claim that I'm a mathematician, which is called nonsense. So with my historian's hat on, I would say the following. It's trivial, everybody knows this, but I would still say it. The world is always changing. Nothing is ever inviolable, basically, or immutable. Since the Second World War, we've had NATO with the US as a backstop for 70 years as the guarantor of peace. And so I can say for my person that I have basically come to take that for granted. I basically I was born into this world, and I grew up in this world, and to me this is just immutable and will never change. This is, of course, naive. This is silly to expect. Everything changes, and this is changing at the moment. So pragmatically, I think Europe just has to stand back from this and say precisely this. We've had a good run. The US is retrenching. Maybe not forever, but for now we can't assume that they will come back. They have disappeared. They've left the building. The new world order is here. So how do we respond? And I think the only way to respond is for Europe I'm going to say something first, and then I'm going to correct myself. So bear with me. Excuse me. For Europe to build the United States of Europe,
Mm.
and I mean this as a metaphor. That's the correction. I'm not naive enough to believe that we can build the United States of Europe. But as a metaphor, what I mean is for Europe to emancipate it as a collaborative and cooperative group of world-leading economies and build a military and economical capacity to rival that of the other polar groups in the world, which is the United States of America, of course,
Mm.
and which is the consolidating autocratic states under the guidance of China.
Mm.
And that has to be done economically. We have the single market. It needs to be reformed. We are not talking about this now,
Mm.
but we can if we want. But militarily also, we need to come together.
Mm.
What is often now already mooted is a European army. Let
Mm.
me just say that I think that's nonsense.
Mm.
We cannot build a European army. That's pie in the sky. The command structures, it just doesn't exist. Let's forget that. But what we can do is we can utilize infrastructure which is already here, and that is importantly the command structures of the European NATO countries.
Mm.
You need to remember how NATO is basically structured. I mean, NATO is not just one bloc. There are
Mm.
different regions within NATO, and the European countries have had, for the last 70 or 50 years, let's say, a very clearly developed communal command structure. So
Mm.
these channels exist. They
Mhm.
will no longer be staffed by American generals as head of these units,
Mhm.
but they will have to be staffed by European generals as head of these units.
Mhm.
So we need to utilize these. That's point one. Point two is we need to, unfortunately, and I'm going to hate myself for saying this, but we need to rebuild our societies or transform our societies into pre-war societies.
Mm.
The luxury of living in a post-war world is over.
Mm.
And I don't want this to be taken as a dramatic doom mongering. I don't mean by that war will inevitably come. What I mean is we need to develop a mindset as if it comes in order to prevent it. A pre-war society is a society which hasn't got the luxury to invest in sectors of the economy which are not defense. It
Mm.
is a society which needs to prioritize investment in defense, unfortunately, over others.
Mm.
So that's a hard choice which we have to make. And part of that, and this is now finally the answer to your question, part of that, unfortunately, is also that we have to build a peacetime, a latent military capacity, and that is conscript.
Mm.
We have to bring back conscript service, and that does not mean that I want to see boys and girls fighting in theaters of war. What it means is that I want everybody to have passed a stint in the forces in
Mm.
some capacity, logistics, um,
Mm.
technology,
Mm.
radar, weapons design, something
Mm.
which they can use later in their civil life,
Mm.
but which will make it easier for them to enter the defense forces if the worst comes to the worst.
Yeah, I agree.
And take it from me, guys, I'm not saying that lightly because I've been a conscript. I've spent 15 months in the European army, in the German
Mm.
army as a conscript. So what I'm often getting is, yeah, sure. I mean, those people who call for conscript services are those who don't have to do it. Well, I have done it. So
Mm.
for me to say that, I don't
Mm.
say this lightly.
Mm.
I'm going to hate the world in which we have to be, but I
Mm.
think we're going to have to emancipate ourselves in Europe in this way and it is not impossible that we will be able to do it. But
Mm.
I do not believe that we have a choice. It is
No.
either we are going to succeed in this or we're not going to succeed in this. But
Mm.
the alternative that we might still rely on
Mm.
America as a backstop, let's not be naive, that doesn't exist anymore.
Mm. So, in short, I suppose, hope for the best, prepare for the worst is, I guess,
Pretty much.
where we're at. Now, I've got to say, I've got to go in 9 minutes. So, let's just sort
Everybody
of
will
move.
be relieved for me to stop
So
speaking.
let's just move on with this. So, I mean, obviously, you know, I mean, I don't know what they're called, but I mean, I call them the terrible twins at the moment. You know, Musk, Trump, and Musk,
Yeah. Oh
and
dear. Yes.
you know, there's a lot. I mean, we were going to talk about this, but we haven't had time really. But the whole kind of Doge thing, and you know, Musk trying to cut you know his sort of mission to cut costs and things, but just overall, you know, much as I'm pretty shocked by what I shocked in the sense of surely he's not going to do that. Oh no, yes he is. With Trump every day, similar kind of thing with Musk, and I think with Musk he's a very he can potentially be a dangerous influence in the sense that he is you can't easily get rid of him. He is, you know, he's not a career politician, because if he was a career politician, you could maybe, you know, put a load of investigators on him, dig up some dirt from the past, you know, find something that would, you know, dent his credibility, and you could get rid of him like that. But he's not. You can't get rid of him because he is Elon Musk. He's not only a successful businessman. He is possibly the most successful businessman, and not just at one business, but at many, and not just any businesses. These are businesses of the future. So I think really he is at the very least going to be a kingmaker, potentially, and everyone's gonna have to do, you know, have to kind of agree with him really. And you know, this brought to mind the fact that it's almost to the extent that he is like a Bond villain.
Yes.
Um, and I would suggest, even I would go to the extent of saying GoldenEye, and he is Elliot Carver, but much more powerful, loads more money. Because at the time you're watching that film and you're thinking, "Oh right, yeah, he's moving the satellites and, you know, changing this." Yeah, that's right. Yeah, of course you can do that. Well, he can. You know,
Yes, exactly.
Musk has satellites. He can do that,
That's right.
and he can control the narrative, and it's pretty scary, and it does feel like it is. You know, it is almost like a Bond movie,
It is.
which brings us on
Very good.
to seemed absolutely seamless. Brings us on to Amazon buying, you know, buying the Bond franchise essentially.
Oh,
So
the
getting the,
transition is smooth.
I know, it was almost as if it was planned, you know. But anyway,
But it wasn't
so
planned. It was
yeah,
completely spontaneous.
of course it
Yes.
was. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. They bought MGM Studios quite a while ago.
Yeah.
It was really, really good. A good deal for them, and I think that they now they've got creative control over that franchise. There's lots of talk of or that, as you know, James Bond itself, spin-off potential, loads and loads of stuff. I mean, I think if they do it right, it could be an absolute goldmine. And I
Yeah.
feel that maybe, I mean, I don't watch these things, but I would have thought that you could have a really good, you know, you could get. It would be more like a Star Wars type. So Star Wars, you've had Matt the Mandalorian, you've had various other spin-offs that seem to have been very very successful. There
Yeah.
have been others which have been argued as being less successful. And I would say, I mean, I don't know who's got the rights to Jason Bourne, for instance, but I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if they got Jason Bourne as well, and then they could have a whole spy CIA franchise thing going on and crossovers like a Marvel multiverse but for spies. I mean, it would be
Love it.
pretty amazing. So so it's pretty amazing stuff, I think.
Absolutely. I'm excited because I haven't actually followed the ins and outs of this hugely, but there was a lot of talk and there seemed to be some atrophy. Nobody could make a decision of who the next Bond character was going to be, what the next Bond character was supposed to be like, who was going to play it, etc. And let's not forget, I think the last Bond movie was 2021, wasn't it? So we've
that's
had
right,
like 4 years of nothing going on. Normally, it was like 4 years was the interval between Bond movies came out, and so we've had a franchise lying dormant for a while, and I don't know exactly why that was, but I'm guessing that one source, one actor now, or one institution having creative control over all of it, well, that must, at least intuitively, would think that would speed up the process of invigorating the franchise or exploiting the franchise.
Yeah.
And what I also find interesting is your point is very interesting. I mean, if you look at the modern world of entertainment, then everything appears to balloon out into franchises, isn't it? It's like a microcosm, an ecosystem of products. Mandalorian and all these sort of various spin-offs in the Star Wars universe, but not just that, also Batman, for example.
Yeah.
There were video games, and there is a show on you can see it on ITV. I can't remember now what it's called. Penny something.
Pennyworth. Yeah, I was watching
exactly.
that the other day.
I like
good,
the show. It's
it's
a
quite
good
good. Yeah.
And
but there's loads, isn't there? There's the Penguin. There's Gotham. There's absolutely loads of different.
There's lots of things, and what, to my knowledge, has not been done yet is precisely your point. They haven't done crossovers yet, or at least I don't know of them. I mean, maybe they exist. I don't know. I mean, I don't know everything about this world, but I used to be an ardent fan of Marvel comics, and Marvel comics have done crossovers forever.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And when they did the crossovers, when they first introduced them, it was a real shot in the arm to the franchise of Marvel.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So that's interesting. And I think the James Bond franchise, or the potential franchise, is undervalued because I haven't seen a TV series. I've seen a few video games, so I haven't seen a TV series, haven't seen a crossover. So one hopes that they can do lots of interesting things.
I think they will. I mean, massive fan of crossovers. Actually, I'm sure that no one will know what I'm talking about when I say this, but one of my favourite crossovers I saw in recent years was Magnum and Hawaii Five-0 crossing over on an investigation, which I quite like.
Really?
They did that. That was very good. Yeah. But anyway, gonna have to go. We're gonna have to leave it on that note. But look, really interesting to talk about this. Welcome back. Glad you're in one piece.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm in one piece as well, which is very unusual. And of course, I mean, my skiing is back. I didn't necessarily go slowly, so I'm happy to be back in one piece.
Really good, really good.
And future episodes, we're going to talk about lots of things, also about Doge, I think, because that's an interesting thing to me.
Absolutely, and we're talking about the cost cutting as opposed to the dodgy meme coin. But anyway,
dodgy,
very dodgy. Yeah, on that note.
Exactly.
On that note,
okay, good,
all right,
excellent.
Thanks a lot, then.
Thanks for having me, guys. As always, thank you very much.
Right.
Bye bye.
See ya. Bye.